Michelle. Thanks for
How
having
are
me.
you? Oh, of
Great.
course. Just kind of wanted to have an opportunity to discuss your position on things and kind of get to know you better so that more Oregonians in your district can learn who you are, what you're about, and why they should vote for you.
Great.
So I just kind of wanted to let you have, so I'm going to give you the floor. I'm going to let you just kind of
Okay.
tell me about yourself and what you're about and what you stand for.
Okay.
And we'll just go from there.
My name is Nicole De Graff. I'm running for state representative of House District 12. And I was raised here in a small town in Oregon. I have 3 kids, and they're my main reason for getting involved in politics to begin with 7 or 8 years ago. And I think it's just kind of morphed from there, from getting involved in one issue. It just kind of, the more involved you get, the more you're educated on the process and what's been going on in the state. It's just easy to take action instead of getting angry, and instead of writing emails and making calls. I feel like I want to work from inside the Capitol now, because there's only so many emails and public comments you can give. And so that's what I'm doing. I have the support of my family, and I'm ready to take this on.
All right. Sounds about, that honestly just sounds kind of like what every parent's been going through, I think, for the last, 2 years or more. We can only write so many emails, and we can only make so many phone calls. And right. I think a lot of us felt like how you felt, like I can only do this so much before it's like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I need somebody on the other end that's
Right.
actually going to take action.
I think like the issues that I had were different than the issues I have now. So I didn't know anything about the comprehensive sex ed that is mandated by the state. I didn't know what that kind of included. I thought maybe it's just human development. And then when I went to the school and, they had a curriculum preview night by Planned Parenthood, and ask questions. And then the last few years with kids being at home with COVID, seeing that some of the other curriculum that's involved with kindergartners, that, they're having pronoun exercises to where they're picking their genders now without their parents' permission. And then some of the other issues, like I know they're calling it anti-racism. Right now it's not CRT. So that's a little bit concerning, because for me, it looks like they're trying to combat racism using other forms of racism. And I don't think it's very beneficial to teach kids that just because you're born white, it means you're an oppressor, or just because you're born with dark skin, it means you're automatically the oppressed. And so I think there's a lot of issues with certain woke teachers that are pushing their own agenda. And I remember in school, I didn't know what my teachers' political leanings were. I didn't know if they were activists. I didn't know if they were transgender or anything like that. And I really appreciated with one of my son's teachers. He doesn't show any of his bias. He just teaches the kids how to think for themselves. And I really appreciate that as a parent. But at the same time, it's just becoming more and more allowed in schools. And so I've been hearing from other parents that have the same kind of concerns. There was another parent in Eugene that had said he asked what 1619 was, because he had heard there was controversy, but he had no idea what it was. And he simply asked, hey, what is this? Because they're saying, hey, read this, and this is what we're teaching your kids. And they basically got a call and said, how dare you ask what we're teaching your kids? You as a parent have no right to know. And, that automatically creates an adversarial relationship with parents anyways. Instead of inviting parents in, they're actually still not allowing parents, especially if they're unvaccinated, to come into school. So that kind of thing sends, red flags, sends up warning bells. And you think, well, if you're just asking, what else are they trying to hide from parents,
No, I totally do. The way I look at it, when you're talking about like anti-racism, right? Like when you think about it, you look at the definition on paper, just the way it sounds. I mean, it sounds fantastic. Who wants to be racist, right? No one.
Right.
No one wants to be that. So the theory, I mean, when you think about it, like it's so benign, like that term. Of course, you want to be an anti-racist, but teaching children to judge someone based off of the color of their skin, whether that's light skin or dark skin, it's trying to fight racism, like you said, with more racism. And I'm going to botch the quote, but like Martin Luther King had said, you can't fight the dark with the dark. You have to have light to combat it. So it's like the hate and the love, or something, along those lines. And it's very divisive. And
Right.
I'm so glad that you had teachers that didn't teach their ideologies to you, but I did. So
Oh.
coming from, yeah, I remember very clearly my favorite teacher, very woke, and I didn't know it then. I mean, I know now because we're friends on social media, and I'm like, how did I not know that? But kind of just explains a lot about my own history. So I think you're right. I think it's a lot of specific teachers, but I think that it goes a little bit beyond that. Do you know much
Mhm.
more about where it's like derivative of or how it's coming down the pike?
Well, that's funny. I was just thinking. I remember the last few years, different legislation pieces coming up, and I said, "Where? When did they decide they're going to have a sexuality director?" Because I remember when it was announced, when was hired, and what their salary was and what their scope was, and I signed up for that newsletter because I was like, "What the heck?" And so I was just thinking last night I wanted to go back and look at the ORS and find out because I know it's just been a little bit at a time with
Mhm.
the anti-racism stuff. I know they had what's her name, Hannah Nicole. You know, the person who
And
wrote
Hannah
Tonight.
Nicole Jones.
Right. So I know they had her here. It was in 2020, and I
Mhm.
believe it was either Oregon School Board Association or Oregon Department of Ed. I can't remember which branch of that had invited her and paid for her to come, but I'm pretty sure it's legislation the Democrats have passed because I do know they want um, some of the social justice issues, and they put it in certain bills that are education related. But like there isn't one bill that said anti-racist bill, we're going to teach it, but I do know that they are putting it in certain education bills, and it's like teaching kids that math has racist components, but it'll be like just one line in a bill. So that is what I want to do more research on, because we need to actually be vigilant and make sure that just components of it aren't added every year to where we have this full-blown curriculum and now this has to be taught in public schools.
Right. So it sounds like your biggest thing right now currently is combating that from the inside on that end. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's my goal. Yes.
And I want to say that the Hannah Nicole thing, I think that was in I think that was ODE.
Oh, okay.
And I want to say they paid
Okay, I did.
upwards of 20 or $40,000.
Yes, yes.
It was something
Yep.
obscene. I was just like, are you kidding me?
I know that was crazy.
And
um,
as a parent that didn't know about it though, I mean, and this is, if you I hope that you get the seat, but when you win, when they have things like that, for example, I called to try and get that recording so I could watch it for myself, and
mhm.
they told me it was not available and they weren't going to have one.
Really? So
It's
our
yeah.
public school dollars are paying for that, and yet
Mhm.
as a parent we can't have access to that. And then
Yeah.
the side of it that says, "Oh, you're just being political. There's nothing wrong with this." Then if there's nothing wrong with it, why are you hiding it? And educate me on it if you think that there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with it. And
Right.
let's all come together and look at the same thing at the same time,
Mhm.
and those things shouldn't be, oh, if you're subscribed to an email you might happen to see that they're having this, instead of celebrate it. Let's have this big thing. Why are you hiding? What did Shouldn't we all be involved in this if this is something that's valid? And I remember being taught, kids should be taught about slavery, kids should be taught about
Mhm.
racism, and we are. We my kids they have a virtual cohort with their school, and they were it was Black History Month, and so they were covering quite a few things, and Martin Luther King Jr. was one of them. So I don't think we need to expand on this, and it's kind of a revisionist history from my understanding. Um, and so I don't really think that the parents that I've been talking to want this in our schools. And so there has to be a way for us to not allow this to continue on without a bigger discussion from
Right.
instead of stakeholders being teachers unions and teachers and ODE, parents are stakeholders too, and we're kind of being left out of the conversation.
Right. Right. And that's, I think, for almost every candidate, at least on the Republican ticket, um, that's like their platform is parents, because they know, we all
Right.
know, I know, everyone else out there knows that parents have completely been shut out of their children's lives, their education, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and we feel powerless, and we need people like yourself to kind of bring that power in and help us regain some of that footing so that we can have a say. And you're right. I
Right.
mean, it does kind of feel like they're hiding it, and I never really thought about that, but If it's so great, why is it so hard to find information? If it's so great, why is it written in riddles? You know,
Right.
it's very hard. So it'll be good to have somebody that can kind of just pick that apart and kind of help people understand, you know,
Right.
what's what. Because maybe there is things that are good about it, you know, and I'm not going to say that there's not, because I'm sure that there are. Otherwise,
Mhm.
people wouldn't be so drawn to it.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of bad, and I would have to agree with you on that.
And there's so much conversation happening right now in school choice, and
Mhm.
and that's one thing I would definitely work towards. I would definitely work towards either some kind of tax credit system or voucher system for alternatives, because I've done everything with schooling, whether homeschooled, charter, private, public. We've done it all. Now they're in a pod. So school choice, it is gaining traction in other states, and I know that there's legislators, Republican legislators currently in Oregon, that are looking at what other states are doing, that are looking like they're starting to pass that. And I don't think that it is a mountain that's too big to climb. I think parents, this is like the perfect time in history for this to happen, because
Mhm.
I think there was something over like 20,000 kids that enrolled in 2020, and I don't know what the amounts are for this year. I don't think that's come out, but even seeing Portland School District, how their enrollment numbers are going to go down like 20%. So parents are not happy, and
Mm-mm.
I don't think we should continue to reward the system that is performing low. What is it? The literacy rates in third
So
graders are like 47%.
if
If
that, I
we're
think
not
it's
seeing those, if we're not seeing the results that we should be seeing for the money that we're spending, we need to have a broader discussion, and we need to change things, because our kids are getting left behind, and COVID only made that worse.
Mhm.
So that's my goal, is to work on funding following the student kind of issue.
No, I mean, and it's our education is abysmal, as
Yeah.
most people do know. So it does need a strong, it needs a lot of strong heads in the legislative to kind of turn that around, I think, to put in place policies and laws that will create it, making it so that we can build education up. And school choice is most definitely the best way to even that kill. It'll help provide families with what they need to
Right.
give their child the education that will work for their child.
Right.
Um, there is still an initiative still in place for this ballot measure. I'm hoping for November. It
Mm.
got
Oh, I
turned
wasn't sure
down.
how that. It's still going.
It got turned down, but my understanding is that Shamia Fagan did not consult anybody else, and so she actually missed the loophole in which they had found, because the people that wrote it and wrote the draft and everything, they reached out to all the other states that were able to make it work.
Mm.
I mean, every single one. They went and picked through every single thing, and they found the loophole on the way in. Um, but Shamia didn't get that yet, so they're taking it actually back with attorneys, and they're gonna get it flipped, I think. So
Okay.
we're fingers
Oh, well, that's
crossed.
good.
Fingers
That's
crossed.
good news. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. If
That
not,
would be
we
interesting
need
to.
we need as many people like you in legislative to just make it pass.
Right. I would love to be on the education committee. I know that
Mhm.
there's so many layers to to education, with budgeting and curriculum. I get it, and I am curious to find out what other people think about having an elected, superintendent of the state, instead of having an appointed director of the Department of Ed. Um, I can see the positives and negatives of both sides of that.
Right.
But I would love to be on the education committee. I think there's a lot more issues that we need to look at. That the essential skill test. Now, I understand it's not saying that. Well, this doesn't mean we're not graduating kids who can't read or whatever. But the thing that gets me is they're like, well, we're gonna take this away for 5 years and then we'll look at it. It's like, that just seems a little backwards, especially with the data we already have. And you're going to do that now after
Mhm.
kids had such disrupted learning for 2 years. It just, some of the things we're doing seems illogical.
Illogical, counterproductive, and completely
Yeah.
nonsensical, if I were to add
Yeah.
my 2 cents. Um, so what is your I know that we can go on and on about education. I
I
know that
know.
we could. We totally could. Um, but let's move on to a different topic, just because I want to know a little bit more, and I'm sure other people will want to hear more too. So some of the hot topics, as we know, I mean, there's the crime issue, the homeless issue. There's the government overreach. I know that that's another thing people are looking to
Mhm.
curb the governor's emergency powers, like their ability to call in emergency orders. And what abortion, I don't even want to touch that one with the 10-foot pole, but we can if you want.
I'm pro-life. That's all I'll say about that.
But let's start with the governor and the emergency orders. What's your position on that, and what would you do differently?
I just can't believe it's been 2 years. We were talking tonight. Some friends and I were talking. We had a campaign meeting, and we were reminiscing about how when they said, "Oh, you can take off your mask if you're vaccinated," and it was just like mind blowing that people were asking at Costco if you had your vaccine or not. So I know some people want to just move on from COVID, but I don't want to move on for COVID because I think that we did a lot of things wrong, and I think we did a lot of things wrong intentionally. I don't think that it was very smart at all. I think it was inept. So I don't want to move on from them. I don't want OHA director to be able to do what he's done. Kate Brown had these emergency orders that just never ended. So I definitely think the legislature should put a kibosh on that and really check those. We need to take some of those powers back and use them for a real emergency, which is an immediate threat. And as far as OHA goes, she doesn't have to keep her emergency orders going because, the damage is done with administrative rulemaking. And, the vaccine requirement for teachers and staff and even parent volunteers still stands. That is still a permanent rule. The indoor masking and masking at schools and masking healthcare and vaccine things, that's still in permanent rule. So, I would work as hard as I could to get that rule back because they can do whatever they want on a whim with those rules. And we shouldn't have unelected bureaucrats able to have that much control over businesses and individuals. And it's really frustrating. So yeah, there's the COVID issue. And I know the legislature, some of the Democrats, I think Elizabeth Steiner Hayward from Beaverton wanted to look back and see what our COVID response was, but she wants to see, how good our vaccinating people response was. So I want to look at who had $600,000 from PPP funds and who didn't get it. I know people that didn't get their unemployment checks for 4 or 5 months, and these are small, sole proprietor businesses. And so I want to look at all of it, and I know they say, well, we don't want to do anything with checking Cape Brown's emergency orders until hindsight's 2020, but a lot of this stuff should have been stopped earlier. So I don't want to let COVID go until some people are held accountable, until some of those powers are rolled back. And I don't think that I think people are be on board for that because the way things were handled, like telling pharmacists and doctors they couldn't prescribe certain medicines that they thought would help COVID, that's just it's backwards. And they say that the party of progressives, and yet that's so regressive. Who knows how many people died because they couldn't get proper treatment.
Yeah, I mean,
the fact that hospice workers couldn't go inside of hospice workers can go see elderly in their care homes. That's ridiculous. People are dying alone. So I mean, there's just a lot of things that I would like to look at and have like the hugest audit ever.
Yeah, I mean, then that's honestly, I think, needs to be done. I think that it needs to be looked at and I think it should be a third party that's unattached to Oregon, maybe. I don't really know, but somebody that can really just look at it objectively and go, okay, this is where there was failure. This is where there wasn't. This is what should have been done, and then really evaluate that and maybe plan a pandemic response like many states have had. In fact, I read the one that the ACLU put out in 2008, and you would be shocked because it's almost backwards of what we've been seeing. It's insane.
Well, that's what gets me is that people that are smart economists knew we shouldn't close down our economy. And then look at where we are with inflation, That's just one aspect. Look at they talked about deaths of despair. They predicted this, and there are suicides. Kids did kill themselves over isolation and COVID issues. So, we owe it to our kids. We owe it to our current generation, let alone our next generation, to not do what we did. So I'd be interested in reading that.
Oh, I will send that to you. The one that I'm talking about, I will send it to you because it's definitely interesting. I was going to reach out to the doctors that wrote it, the scientists and doctors that wrote it. I'll send it to you later though, but for sure, because it
Yeah.
was almost opposite of what we've done, with the exception of a few things, and it even went over like lockdowns, quarantines, all the above.
Yeah, well, there was I don't remember how many thousands of doctors or whatever that were in the Great Barrington Declaration
Mhm.
early on saying this is what we should do. We can protect our elderly and vulnerable, and then everybody gets COVID, natural immunity, yada yada yada, and it just seemed like it was really ignored.
I mean, and that the Great Barrington Declaration that you're talking about, I mean, like, it seemed very common sense to me. When I read that, I
Yeah.
was like, yes, I can totally get on board. That makes sense. Protect the vulnerable.
Hmm.
Why didn't we do that? There's actually a U.S. senator that's been having roundtable discussions. I don't know to what capacity, of
Oh, Ron
people and
Johnson.
experts.
Yeah,
Yes. Have you watched
for sure.
them?
No, I've
They,
seen parts of it. Yeah.
I mean, they've been incredible, because this time around, he's bringing in the experts to go over the early treatment, the preventative
Hmm.
care, or not preventative, but the early treatment that people should have received that didn't receive
Hmm.
it, and
Yeah.
what kind of accountability needs to be held, and to who, for those
Yeah.
decisions, to not do that.
Right. And
Um,
even if everything Kate Brown did that was she did her best, give her a break, that sort of thing. Well, she led with fear, and it was so divisive, and it even bothered my teenager when they saw the signs that, oh, your teenager you could kill your best friend just by leaving the house. That's not
it's
necessary. In fact, I remember when Kate Brown locked things down. I went to church on that Sunday. It was like the 16th. And I remember it was so funny because everybody was like naturally 6 feet apart because not everybody was there. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. People that were afraid were home, or people that are elderly were home. And then some of us had chosen to go. And I just thought that's how it should have been. If you want to take the risk,
mhm.
you're not in the high risk category. You do what you want. They should never have been able to close churches down, by the way. Um, and so, people were kind. We were talking about let's love our neighbor by giving people space if they're nervous, just, don't make a big deal about it. And that was fine. And then when Kate started the mandates and forcing people to mask, and then it was like things just got
They
more
spun.
hostile and divisive.
Yeah, and they spun all out of control. I mean, in terms of how bad that division got, and
Yeah,
how it kind of completely paved the way for where we're at today,
yep,
right? I mean, the mandates
exactly.
were insane. Florida did it right, in my opinion, for the most part.
Hmm.
And one of the doctors, Dr. Baccaria, Jay Baccaria of the Great Barrington Declaration, he was actually on one of Ron DeSantis's committees, like where
Yeah,
he helped
I
advising with
saw
his
one of their
decisions.
2-hour presentations with him on there. And
Hmm.
that's when I was like, what are we doing? And I would take that information to the county commissioners, and and they just, it was glazed over. They just thought I was, I didn't know what I was talking about. And now that it's coming out that was, so much of that was true, I feel like going back to them and saying, next time you should listen to your constituents better, because we have a broader, you know, um, base of information that you might not have than you're just getting from Kate Brown.
Right.
So, anyways, COVID, I know we could talk about that because it's very
We could always,
frustrating. But,
yeah, it's all been.
the other thing that's frustrating is I didn't notice, I guess I wasn't paying attention, or I don't really know what happened with crime increase, but it was right before COVID. I went to a DeFazio thing downtown in Eugene, and I remember, man, there are a lot of homeless people down here. Like I knew that issue was, increasing in problems, but it was the first time I felt like I didn't feel a little safe because they were kind of camped around my car when I got back, and I
Mhm.
just felt a little vulnerable, and I thought I should be able to feel safe walking to my car downtown in the middle of the day. And that's only worsened. My husband got his work truck broken into in the middle of the day in the parking lot when he went inside Fred Meyer, and so there's a lot of property crime up. And then when you hear about us having the worst addiction rates in the country, and you see that there's mental health issues, and there's drug problems, and so I guess that all kind of goes together with the increase in crime. But I didn't realize that it had gone up so much until COVID, when we're sitting around at home and we're watching the news and stuff, and you
Mhm.
see the reports, and you hear about all the different shootings and stuff in Portland. It just is,
Right.
it's kind of out of control. And then you see things that are being done in a legislature, and it's like, well, they're kind of a little soft on crime. And why would we be thinking about letting all these, you know people go early, And especially when it's part of Measure 11, it just seems like I think we really should explore and keep what people have voted for.
Right.
And if they want to reverse that, then send it back to the ballot again, I guess. If that's really your issue, then spend the time and spend the money to do that. But I just feel like there's just a lot of soft on crime issues that we need
And
to stop.
yeah, and there definitely is. My friend and I were actually just talking about this very subject the other day, and she's like, "No, that all happened. All the homeless, it got really bad, and the drugs because of the decriminalization of drugs." And I said, "Actually, hear me out, friend." I was like, we had these problems before that happened, and let's be
Yeah.
real. People were going to commit crimes, and they were going to do drugs, regardless of whether or not they were risking going to jail for it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just the way it is. I don't think that really played that much
Well,
of a
we
difference.
dropped. We were like 48, now we're 50 or something. So it was, and once something has momentum going towards a direction, it's much harder to obviously change that direction.
Mhm.
But I've heard a lot of different candidates speak on this issue and legislators, and it's interesting when you read testimony from, say, people who kind of run some of the programs that people get, like the yearly programs. So they want people off drugs, they get them a house, um, and certain programs have better success rate, and some of them cost 50,000 to pay one person to go through, and some of them are, much cheaper. And then I heard that we have more nonprofits than anybody per capita, and I thought, well, is there some kind of metric that's set? Like, if you're going to get this money to help people get off the street and get off drugs, shouldn't you have some kind of measure? I mean,
Right.
this seems like we're throwing a lot of money at this, but we're not seeing the results. Kind of like that, the Measure 110. I was reading how only 1% of the funds that they have earmarked for that was accessed, and
I don't know
and
what
I
Measure 110
remember
is. What is Measure 110?
that's the drug
Oh, okay.
decriminalization thing. And I remember that was kind of sold to us as this is going to help prevent and treat people that are on drugs, but come to find out that's not really part of what it is. And so that's the other thing that's frustrating is seeing programs, money thrown at something, and it's not really helping. So I know that the homeless issue is many layered, but we can't keep just doing what we've been doing because
No,
it's getting
it's
worse.
not working. It's not
Yeah.
working. And I think I think it would be smart for most of the candidates that are running for like House and Senate, I think, to speak with at least a handful of the gubernatorial candidates, because some of them have some amazing plans,
Mm-hmm.
some not so amazing, but maybe need some fixing. And maybe there might be some kind of way to come together on that, once you guys get
Yeah.
elected or
Well,
whatever.
it's gonna take that political will for everybody working on this issue.
Right.
And I've spoken to somebody who runs a safe site place in Eugene, and I think that's who you need to. That's who legislators and whoever becomes governor really needs to talk to, the people that are running successful programs and the people that are there day to day. And I think that's where you're going to find, and not do something that looks like something to make it look like, well, I guess that's virtue signaling. It's like there's so many things that are done that make it look like we're doing something and we care,
Right.
when really we're just pushing it off into a different corner of the city or whatever, so that's not a real solution either.
It's funny that you say that, because there is at least one candidate that was wanting to work with the nonprofits and legislative to get that kind of stuff done and to help them. He wants to do it on a one by one. I'm not going to say their name because it's not about them, but they want to do it on a 1-by-1. Like, because it is, I mean, realistically, we're talking like the nonprofits. I mean, if they're getting involved, then the problem is so multi-layered, like you had said, right? And you have people need help one-on-one. Everyone's different. It's either all the above, it's some or none. All their issues are all different. And so, and maybe not one-on-one, but close to that. And that person wants to involve the nonprofits, like you had just mentioned. That's pretty funny. Because I think it's important.
We're throwing so much money at it. But they need to be done one-on-one with programs that are actually having results that are long-term, like at least a year, and building from that. So I know they're out there because I've seen it.
Yeah, and then there are programs out there that are legitimately there for the right reasons, and they are legitimately seeing results, and I know that to be a
Yes.
fact.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not saying any of them aren't legitimate. I'm
no,
just saying
right, right, right. I
let's
know. I
find
wasn't suggesting that though. I
yeah,
just meant like you're right. Like there are
let's
some that are
find
doing really well and
yeah.
others not
There's
so
not like
much.
this magic solution that is
Mm-mm.
this is the one answer that one candidate's going to come up with.
No.
This is looking at what is already working and expanding on that and saying, hey,
Right.
let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's do what this program's doing,
Let's work
do
smart,
it
not
for
hard.
their amount of money instead of, oh, well, just just because you're in Portland, you have to get X amount of dollars.
Yeah, that's
So
just stupid. It doesn't necessarily work like that. Um, I think what needs to be done, like you had said, like it's just just because you're in Portland doesn't mean anything. It should be based
right.
off of the need and everything. But speaking of politics, how would you, and you, as you know, Nicole, I'm a former Democrat. How would you bridge that gap and be able to work in a more bipartisan manner with the opposite party?
Um, well, one thing I learned with starting to get involved in politics and meeting my legislator and going to legislative days and was I realized that just because my legislator, who was a Democrat, thought differently than me and disagreed, didn't mean he was the enemy. And I know that might sound funny, but I think sometimes we can start to view somebody else as the enemy instead of thinking that we have more in common with each other than we realize. And I know that it's been hard because things have been really divisive. Like I said, I think Kate led with fear and a lot of her policies and the marketing that went along with that. But I don't think that our problem at the root of it is each other. I think our problem is like a problem with our leadership, and I think that we can work with each other. We do need balance, um, but our problem isn't with each other. And if I ever say, "Oh, the Democrats do this," what I'm saying is, Democrat from Beaverton or Democrat from Hillsborough, whatever, proposed this bill, and now we have this problem that's not benefiting all of Oregon. And so
Right.
I think a lot of our problems have to do with who's in Salem. The gross receipts tax. Look what happened with Bimart Pharmacy, and I'm not sure of any other pharmacies that have closed down, but that's the one has been in the news. And so they did pass a little bit of a fix bill, I think, exempting pharmacies that had 9 or fewer pharmacies throughout the state, so smaller businesses. And that's I like to look at that cat tax and see, well, who else, like, we're all suffering under that because we have high taxes. We're like the third or fourth or whatever for income tax. We're one of the least business friendly states in the nation. So there's a lot we can look at as far as how to make things a lot less expensive for everyday Oregonians. But we all kind of, we want to have more money in our pocket from our paycheck, and we all kind of want the same things. So I think we have more in common. We live here, especially those of us that didn't move. I'm sure a lot of us know somebody that either closed up shop or a friend that moved, and we're here because we don't want to be forced out, or we like Oregon too much, or we believe Oregon's worth it. Have you seen that 1883 show on Paramount?
I don't
Yeah,
think so. Mm-mm.
Sam Elliott's in it. Anyways, they're going on the Oregon Trail. I think they leave from Texas, and they're talking about how dangerous it is, and how exhausting, and just all these pitfalls they're going to encounter. And the second in command says, "Oh, you've been to Oregon. Is it worth it?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's worth it." And it's kind of funny because it's Sam Elliott, and he also, apparently has a house here. So
He does.
yeah,
I've
I
actually
just
met
think.
him.
Oh, you have?
Mhm.
That's cool.
Yeah, when I was much younger.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a lot of differences ideologically, but that doesn't mean, I mean, everybody wants to feel safe. Everybody wants to be able to take care of their families. We all kind of want to be healthy. We want to have the community thriving. We especially want our kids to be thriving. I think that's one thing that's sort of united um, moms, especially parents from both sides of the aisle, is that. And I remember talking to one saying, I was telling her why I like the idea of school choice and the funding following the student. And she was saying it was like these myths that she had heard over the years why school choice is bad. And I
Mhm.
said, well, look, what is going on now is not good. Your kid, you don't know what to do with your kid. You don't know if you can homeschool or what. And I said, and I felt the same way. So we have to come together and figure something out, because it's not good for our kids. You know, Oregon totally failed our kids, and so we have this opportunity now. It's feel like it's a short window that we can sort of stop the train and put it on a different track.
Right, and I think you're actually 1,000% on point with that with the parents, that at least in the last couple of years. I have seen more people come together from opposite ends and meet in the middle to some extent throughout the
Mhm.
pandemic. So that's been the one thing that's kind of helped, I think,
Yeah.
keep us together even though we've been divided. Does that make if that makes any sense? Like, I mean, even anecdotally, I, for example, was became really good friends with a bunch of conservatives. Never would have ever in my wildest dreams ever thought that would have happened. And you know what? They didn't care about half the stuff that everyone tells me, right? Like I thought, for example, and they weren't what I was told that they would be. I was told that they were racist, bigots,
Mhm.
prejudiced, just terrible people. And they weren't, not even all. And they didn't care that I was liberal minded. They didn't care that I had certain ideologies as long as we were able to meet in the middle. And that's exactly what, that's the important thing is we find something that you have in common, that commonality, that common ground, and then just build from there. And I think
Right.
kids has been one of those things for sure, because we all love our kids, right?
Yeah. And it's kind of, I have a few friends that are still Democrat, and I feel like they like, just seeing other people's viewpoint keeps me honest.
Mhm.
I tend to use a lot of hyperbole. I'm kind of sarcastic at times, but what helps is hearing other people's perspective, knowing that person's human, and we're all human, and nobody nobody gets out alive, and we're all, want we do what's best, and we want what's best for our family. And um and it's good when somebody who thinks differently teaches me something that I didn't think about. So I think that's good to have friends in different political sides, and
Mhm.
we can learn from each other, and we can also remember that we're all on the same earth spinning together.
Right. I mean, and I think something that I've done, like even in the very beginning of all this, because I didn't really understand the anti-racism, the CRT thing. I couldn't wrap my head around it because it just didn't make sense. I mean, it still doesn't, but I wanted to hear the other side. And so I actively went and I sought after um, somebody who was of that opinion
Mhm.
and somebody that was also civilized. And then we ended up having an off, private conversation. And they were able to hear my side as to why I just couldn't buy into it. But they were able to provide me their reasoning. We didn't end up agreeing at all, but we still
Mhm.
had that discourse and very civilized. I mean, again, no agreement, but we still like I had a better takeaway of why they
Mhm.
wanted it, and why he wanted it, and he had a better understanding of why we're against it or why some people are against it, and it was
Mhm.
very eye opening
Yeah.
because there are some issues that definitely could fall under racism or prejudice or systemic. I don't know that they belong together though. Um,
Yeah.
so it was just, yeah. So, I mean, it was just interesting just to kind of keep you honest and just to to empathize. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So,
Right. Cool.
yeah.
I think those
There,
conversations are important.
mhm. Well, and I think empathy can get us pretty far. Empathy and kindness, I think, can help us get a lot further than we are right now. If we
Especially
could
in
all just,
person. And that's the hard part about social media, and talking with people online. You can just sort of forget that there's somebody.
they're a
Well, I know
person.
there's bots and stuff. So, but mostly there's somebody on the other side of the computer.
Right. It is easy to forget. It's totally easy
Yeah.
to just, go all, keyboard warrior at someone and just totally lose sight of the fact that that's a human being and they have their own, life
Mhm.
experiences that's making them, feel a certain way. Um, and it
That's why
does
I like.
make it very
Uh,
hard.
I like to read testimony. So if there's a bill I want to, let's say, oppose, I like to go and read. Well, I like to read both sides of it, but I especially like to read the other side of it, because then I see what it is you know, what their goal is and why they want that, and it does give you a better picture of the whole issue.
Hmm.
And I know that that's a big job, and I hope that legislators are doing that, because we send our testimony and hoping they read it. So I really hope they take it as serious as I've been like reading testimony on.
I think that that's smart, especially
Yeah.
for the oppositional side, because I mean, maybe it's that they want something that maybe you're against it, and their reason for wanting it could be easily solved a different way,
Right.
you know,
Yes. Yeah.
that's less harmful to a population or
Right.
whatever.
Or a way to compromise on, and
Mhm.
not compromise on your values
Right.
or the issue, but compromise on, and like everybody kind of wins in the situation. You can make that person happy, and this other side gets satisfied as well. And that's what I mean when I'm saying balance. And that's what's been really out of balance. And I know there's legislators that have kind of been calling it out, even for even against the Democrat Party. Some have been kind of calling that out, and I think that it's probably the danger with anybody that has sole power. So I just really hope we can get some balance this year, and I actually feel positive that we can, just because of the way things have been going. So our
I'm
future's bright.
I'm pretty optimistic myself. I will say that. I think that even there are some people on all sides, every side of the spectrum, I
Mhm.
think are wanting a little bit more balance, I think. Maybe
Yeah,
one side more than the other, but I think that there are some on the left that want
yeah,
more balance than what we've had. Um, but it's just, we'll get there. And I think that this year will be it.
yeah.
Um, I think
Fingers
too many
crossed.
people have been disgruntled. I mean, too many people are just displaced, disenfranchised right now.
Right.
There's I mean, to be quite frank, there's hell to pay for what they've put Oregonians and children through. I mean,
I hope they're
people
not
are
too
really mad.
disenfranchised to vote, because I know in primary the midterm years that's been low. But I talked to 5 people that I kind of helped encourage to run for state office. So I'm really excited because I'm a regular
Mhm.
person. I think the rest of Oregon is kind of looking for, like, we're tired of politicians. Let's get some regular people in there that have experienced this sort of thing, that are parents, that are business owners, and so
And
yeah,
haven't lost sight. They
right,
haven't lost sight yet of why they're there, right?
right.
And I'm glad
If
you've
that
talked to
makes me
5
an
people.
idealist, a naive idealist, then so be it. I'm gonna just try.
That's okay. You
Yeah,
know what? I think that aspiration and that ideal or that goal is a good thing, because
right.
the more real people that are everyday people that we have in office that are in there for the pure desire to fix and help our state and help the people that live in Oregon, I think the
Mhm.
better off will be. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter if they have a degree or this, that thing, or the other. I think them being there pure-heartedly for that reason alone is just enough.
right.
Um, it's got to be better than what we have anyway.
Yeah. Hey,
But
has talking for 43 minutes?
mhm. All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add? So we can.
Nope, I think we've covered a lot. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Nicole. This is Nicole De Graff, District 12 for Oregon State House Representative.
Have a good night.
All right. Bye, everyone.